Big call to make. CNN announces that we call Florida in the Al Gore column. This is a state both campaigns desperately wanted to win. The state of Florida fought over very hard, the state with a Republican governor named Bush, the brother of the Republican nominee, Jeff Greenfield. This is something that is not making the Bush campaign happy tonight.
This is a roadblock the size of a boulder to George W. Bush's path to the White House. They had counted these 25 electoral votes from the moment George Bush entered the campaign before he was even nominated. Democrats have a very tough time in Florida, whether it was Social Security, the turnout, Joe Lieberman. Now, George W. Bush has to look to Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and those smaller states really become critical.
There's a disagreement we've been hearing, at least what we're hearing out of the Bush campaign. We can ask Candy Crowley and others about this later. There were those. Karl Rove, who's been the chief strategist for Al Gore, for George Bush, said the other day, Candy, are you available? We want to ask, I'll ask you this question. Karl Rove was telling us, I saw was quoted just the other day as saying that there were a number of ways they could win this election without Florida. Do they still believe that's the case?
They still believe that's the case. As easily as about 10 minutes ago, I asked, look, do you really think you can win this without Florida? And they say yes, and run down a long list of states that they have to have. But boy, you begin to look at those other big battleground states, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Michigan. They become so much more important now. This is a huge problem here, but they have said for the past couple of days, look, we think we can win this without Florida. Nonetheless, they spent the 24 of the last 48 hours of the campaign in Florida. That's how important it was to them. So this is not a happy moment for the Bush campaign.
Candy, you've been with the campaign throughout the last year and more. Looking back, were there any warning signs in there?
Early on, they talked about how, you know, Florida didn't lean that Republican. They got upset when we said, well, here's a state that leans Republican and Jeb Bush is the governor, therefore they should take it. They say, no, this is really tough for us. But it really was one that they counted in their column that they thought they could use as a base of votes from which to get to that magic 270. So they have said all along, we knew this was going to be tough. They knew the seniors and the Medicare issue and the Social Security issues were going to be tough for them because they knew that the Democrats had a very aggressive campaign out there, phone campaigns and brochures talking about George Bush's Social Security issues, so they knew it was going to be tough. I do believe, though, up till this very moment, they thought Florida would come their way.
John King, talk about the psychological warfare involved here. Here you have Governor Bush, who went into Arkansas and Tennessee in an obvious effort to embarrass both men, favorite sons from those states, and also to try to convey the message of this will be the president, if he's elected, to bind up wounds and have dialogue. Psychologically, Al Gore seeing that happen, and yet he gets Florida tonight. Is this a shot in the arm for the Gore campaign?
It certainly is, Bernie, and the first big surprise of the night, what the Gore campaign would tell you is, despite the spin from the Bush camp, that those trips to Tennessee and Arkansas were not psychology, they were simple mathematics, that the Bush camp realized Florida was slipping away, and realized it had to find 25 electoral votes elsewhere. Now, the Gore campaign entered the night thinking they would win 15 states and the District of Columbia solid. We should make clear that includes Pennsylvania and Michigan. They're confident they're going to win those, although our early information is that those states are very tough battlegrounds. But if they won those 15 and the District of Columbia, that gets them to 227 electoral votes, 43 shy. You throw in 25 from Florida, just 18 shy now. They have to look for those other 18 votes, assuming they win all the rest of their targets. This, a major boost for the Gore campaign, a cheer going up here in Nashville, a small crowd outside. But as the projections are being made and the calls being made, you hear the gasp and the cheers, the biggest cheer of the night just moments ago when we called Florida for the vice president. 25 big electoral votes. We should note, although it was expected to go Republican because of Governor Jeb Bush, Bill Clinton did win the state back in 1996. And as we see these other states, the dynamic Hal Bruno, Bill Schneider have been talking about, many Democrats say that what we're seeing here is areas with more suburbs. And Florida is a growing suburban state, tend to be trending Democratic. The old, reliable Democratic states with rural areas, they tend to be trending Republican.
All right, John King, Candy Crowley, we'll be back to you later, but right now we want to go quickly to Washington, where our Larry King is with Bob Dole. Larry.
Okay, Senator, what do you make of this? Well, in '96, when I saw Florida come in, we were behind, but I think somebody said in the program here that's why Bush was going to Arkansas and Tennessee and other states, because I think he knew that this was going to be one way or the other very, very close. They can still get there, but this certainly makes it tough.
The way John King just ran it down, if the Democrats get Pennsylvania and Michigan on top of this, and we're going to have 16 states reporting at the top of the hour, is this going to be an all-night horse race?
If they get Michigan and Pennsylvania, well, then it gets real tough, because you got Ohio right now too close to call, West Virginia. It's going to take a lot of those small states, like what you're going to have Missouri, you're going to have Wisconsin, you're going to have Iowa, states that we haven't had in the past few elections. But it's a very close race. I mean, I think...
What surprised you tonight so far?
Well, I just sort of felt like everybody else with Jeb Bush as governor, and Florida, I know it's Social Security, it's a lot of different things in that state, but I thought Bush would eke it out. But it didn't happen. That doesn't mean it's over. So my view is they've got to be very disappointed. But the fact that even New Hampshire, even though it's only 4 electoral votes, has come in for Bush is encouraging, because, in my view, the newspaper up there, the union leaders, driven a lot of Republicans out of the party, moderate Republicans. But to come back and win that state and what the margin was, now if they can win Maine and some other small states, but it takes quite a while to add up to 25.
And how about your old bailiwick, the Senate? How does that look? So far, it's they've lost one, Democrats have lost one, Republicans have lost one.
We pick up one in Virginia. We lose, we lose one in Florida. I understand some others are very close. I don't think it would happen. We'd have to lose a number of seats. And, of course, if Gore and Lieberman win, then we pick up one in Connecticut. So it could end up 50-50, but we'd still win, because Lieberman would have to exit the Senate, and we'd pick up a seat there.
What is overall this tell? Does this tell us that this is a country in division or close to the middle?
I think it maybe a little of each. I mean, we're obviously divided, but I think we are fairly close. I think the fringe candidates, Buchanan is hardly registering. Nader not doing as well as anticipated. And I don't say, he has some pretty good ideas. I watched him on your show just last week. But I think most people find themselves in they're moderate. They're moderate conservatives, moderate liberals. But I think most of them are in the center. That's what Eisenhower always preached back when he was president of the United States. So
and what about the House?
I think the House, we could pick up a few seats. We've seen a few of these. I haven't seen the whole list, but in Kentucky, for example, 2 Republican seats were in danger. They prevailed. I haven't seen other races, but I think overall they're... And keep your eye on Nebraska for a Senate seat. I think it's a dead heat about now. Governor Nelson was heavily favored, but it's a big Republican state. Bush will win by a big margin, might be a pickup, and we may need it if we lose some of the others.
Are you surprised at the apparent strong showing of Hillary? We have no story yet, but apparently there's a strong showing and a big turnout in the city.
I understand there's a big turnout in the city. I think she was favored to win. I don't know. I haven't even heard a number on that race. The last time I heard it was about 4 or 5 points, maybe even greater or less. But, she goes in there not only with the Clinton name, sort of a celebrity status, but the president's very popular there. She's very popular in New York. She picked a good state to run in.
Should the vice president have used President Clinton more in your political...
Well, I think if he wins, the answer is obvious. If he loses, the answer is obvious. So
either
we'll see
way,
what happens,
right? We'll have the answer at the end.
Because it's going to be scapegoating time. And one thing I've said, I'm glad that when the election's over, they won't be talking about the last election. That's the one I was in. They'll be talking about this election.
Thanks so much, Al.
Thank you.
Always great to see you, Bob. I called you Al already.
That's all right. That's close enough.
Well, you know him.
Right.
Senator Bob Dole, the presidential nominee, former vice presidential nominee as well of the Republican Party. As we throw you back to Atlanta, we're going to have 16 states in the District of Columbia checking in. We'll have projections and maybe standoffs. Stay tuned to CNN throughout the night. Back to Atlanta for more coverage.
From CNN Center in Atlanta, coverage of Election 2000 continues. Here again, Judy Woodruff, Bernard Shaw, Jeff Greenfield, and Bill Schneider.
It is 8 o'clock on the East Coast, 16 states. The polls have closed, the District of Columbia, and we have an important call to make in the state of Michigan. But we're showing you Texas. No surprise there, George Bush wins. The stunner at this hour is that we can call Al Gore the winner in the Wolverine state.
This is the state where Reagan Democrats were born, working class people who went Republican on values issues and then on the economy and then on strength. Clinton got them back in '92 and '96, a bitterly contested state. Al Gore takes it, and the map for George Bush gets even tougher.
In the state of Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, too close to call at this hour, still being battled out by the Vice President and Governor Bush.
Another one, this one Bush, it looks like, is going to have to win to build his margin.
In Illinois, I'm sorry, Missouri, too close to call. This one and we're skipping ahead to Illinois. Al Gore, the winner there.
These Midwest battleground states, which George Bush's campaign thought they were going to be very competitive in, they haven't won one yet. And with Michigan and Illinois and Pennsylvania too close to call, but you add Michigan and Illinois to Florida, and Al Gore's people must be feeling very good about now.
And again, in the state of Missouri, it's 11 electoral votes still being fought out. This is a state where the governor running for the Senate, Mel Carnahan, killed tragically in a plane crash. Through this whole election in this state, really upside down for some time.
And again, this is one of those states we always point to because except for 1956, it has gone with the winner in every election since 1900.
In New Jersey, CNN able to say that Al Gore is the winner. George Bush was in there campaigning this very weekend. But it appears that Al Gore has won New Jersey in its 15 electoral votes. Massachusetts, no surprise, a state the Democrats can count on in just about every election you can think of. Al Gore winning and taking its 12 electoral votes. The state of Tennessee, it's Al Gore's home state, but he is not able to count on it. Jeff Greenfield, it's too close to call.
But again, in the Bush calculation, when they told us, well, we can win without Florida, a state like Tennessee was one of the states they had in mind. He went there, kind of drew a line in the sand, said Al Gore may win Washington, D.C., but he's not winning Tennessee. We can't say one way or the other, but if this one doesn't fall for Bush, it's trouble.
Maryland, the Free State, reliably Democratic, and Al Gore wins that, takes its 10 electoral votes. Alabama, a state I guess we thought George Bush we'd be able to say at this hour, another one too close to call. Connecticut, Al Gore, the winner in the Constitution state, and its 8 electoral votes. Oklahoma, its 8 electoral votes go to Texas Governor George W. Bush, the governor of the neighboring state of Texas. Mississippi, another win for the Texas governor, and its 7 electoral votes. Kansas, Bob Dole's home state, we just heard from him, solidly in George Bush's corner, and its 6 electoral votes. Up in the far northeastern corner of the United States, Maine, its 4 electoral votes still up for grabs, still being battled out between Gore and Bush. And finally, the nation's capital, the District of Columbia, no surprise at all, Al Gore the winner. And finally, Delaware in this 8 o'clock count, Al Gore the winner. That is a state where George Bush had been making threatening noises, but it looks like Al Gore has called it. Here is how, and we want to add that we are able at this hour to say the state of North Carolina is in George Bush's corner. This is a poll that closed about half an hour ago in North Carolina, and its 14 electoral votes go to George Bush. Looking at the map, the national map at this hour, you need 270 to win to become president. At this hour, it couldn't be any closer. I guess it could be by 2 votes. But Bush has 121, Al Gore at 119. It is a cliffhanger, gentlemen.
Very much so. Just a quick observation. Before that observation, exit polling from you, Bill Schneider?
Well, we do. We have some exit polling from the state of Michigan. The AFL-CIO endorsed Al Gore back in October, and that was a critical factor in his victory in Michigan. I should add, by the way, that some of those... All right, well, here we have the vote among union household voters in Michigan, and as you can see, the unions delivered big time. 2-1 for Al Gore over George W. Bush, and union households made up 42% of the voters in Michigan. Gore's big victory in Michigan was a union victory. Sweet victory for Al Gore, sweet victory for John Sweeney and the AFL-CIO. Now, what happened in Florida? Well, there we had a lot of new residents move there, getting new jobs. We found that among voters in Florida, that those who said their family finances were better voted very heavily for Al Gore. They were crucial in Gore's carrying the state of Florida.